Did you know that most people who face psychological abuse don't even recognize that they are being destroyed? This is the question that changes everything. Because the answer is even more shocking. They don't always realize it. Because what hits them is not visible. It doesn't leave marks on the body, but it gradually erases the presence of their own soul. There is a type of violence that makes no noise. It doesn't come with screams or slaps. It doesn't appear in headlines, nor does it become an easy statistic. It's the kind of attack that silences smiles, dries tears before they flow, and erases someone's voice even inside their own head. And this is the most dangerous violence of all, the one that makes you believe that you are the problem. Have you ever felt like you were wrong just for existing? As if your presence bothers you for no apparent reason? As if the simple fact of being who you are creates discomfort in others? If so, maybe you've already felt the weight of being different, to be someone who mirrors, which reflects. We are not talking about just anyone. We are talking about chosen. Those who, without understanding exactly why, have the discomfort of awakening emotions that others prefer to hide. It is not a privilege. It is a silent and often painful responsibility. Be part of our spiritual family, subscribe to the channel today, and comment, "I believe" below, as a symbol that you accept your role in this great transition. Let your energy be counted among the chosen. The time is now. The fall did not begin with a scream, but with silence. Little by little, his words were being devalued, his emotions treated as exaggeration. Your limits violated with justifications that said more about others than about you. The atmosphere became colder, the conversations became shorter, the questions less sincere. And when you realized it, you were already far from yourself. What you faced was not just a difficult time, it was a slow engineering of emotional destruction. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men have already gone through traumatic experiences related to emotional or psychological violence, and most of these people never received adequate support. This is because the signs are not always clear, and because often the world prefers to close its eyes to this type of pain. But you didn't fall for nothing. They didn't just want to hurt you, they wanted to erase you. They wanted you to look in the mirror and not recognize yourself, that he felt ashamed of existing, that confused silence with peace, absence with protection, giving up with maturity. Their cruelty was not straightforward, but it was sophisticated. They smiled as they pushed you away. They praised you while emptying your identity. And that, perversely, worked for a while. The cruelest thing is that the world applauds the discreet destroyers, those who know how to manipulate, disguise, convince. They don't scream, but they control. They don't hurt with their hands, but with doubt. And doubt is a slow poison. But there is something they have never been able to calculate. It's resistance. Even on the worst days, something inside you refused to go away. Maybe it was just a whisper, a vague memory of who you were, a glimmer of faith that it was still possible to return. That little spark, ignored by everyone, was what saved you. While they were building their ruin, you, without realizing it, were already putting together the fragments of reconstruction. And this is where the narrative changes. Because this is not just a story of suffering, it is mainly a comeback story. The chosen ones are not the strongest nor the wisest. They are the most sensitive. They are those who feel too much, think too much, perceive too much. And that's why they bother you. They don't pretend they didn't see it. They can't smile at what hurts. They do not adapt easily to indifference. And that makes them dangerous for those who prefer to keep their masks on. But there is a truth that needs to be said. The chosen ones were not born to please. They were born to reveal. Being chosen means being a mirror. And mirrors are uncomfortable. Not because they show lies, but because they reveal truths. Its existence challenges those who have never had the courage to face their own shadow. And because of that, many will try to erase you. Not because you are weak, but because your presence demands that they face what they prefer to hide. That's why you were excluded. That's why you were discredited. That's why they tried to shut you up. But here's the truth they never understood. You don't need their permission to exist. And if you've come this far, it's because there's still a way to go. Not just as a survivor, but as a beacon for others who still live in the shadows. Those who have not yet discovered that they are not broken, they are just awakening. In this script, we will reveal what it means to be a chosen one, not in a fantasy way, but raw, real, human. Let's talk about pain, yes, but also about light, about silence and about voice, about loss and mainly about return. Because the greatest victory is not coming out unscathed. It's standing up. It's being here. It's about continuing. Your journey is just beginning. It's time to regain your strength and build a new path. Subscribe to the channel and be part of this community that is awakening to the truth. When the world makes you doubt yourself, not all emptiness begins with silence. Sometimes it is born from the sound of the wrong words, spoken by the right people, or should have been. There are those who say that the greatest traumas do not come from declared enemies, but from those who hugged us with one hand and pushed us with the other. They were the ones who smiled while diminishing their feelings, who said it's drama when you just wanted to be heard, who used phrases like, "It's all in your head," to silence what you could barely understand. These small wounds, repeated over time, turn even the strongest into shadows of themselves. And the cruelest. It's just that, on the outside, everything is normal. You went to school. I went to work. He carried out his tasks. But inside, it was fading. This is called silent emotional trauma, and it has a name. According to American Psychological Association, since 2018, there has been an alarming increase in cases of complex trauma, CPTSD, especially in people who have experienced continuous situations of manipulation, humiliation, or abandonment. These damages do not come from a single event, but from an accumulation. A long sequence of moments in which your pain was ignored, ridiculed, or trivialized. And the most dangerous thing is that over time you start to believe them. You think you exaggerate, that you are too sensitive, start apologizing for feeling, and little by little, you stop trusting what you feel. This is the breaking point. When a person no longer trusts even their own emotions, they begin to fade away inside. And that's what they did to you. It wasn't an accident. It was a process, a constant work to make you discredit yourself. They knew exactly where to play. Where does it hurt? They knew that if they couldn't destroy your body, they would make you destroy yourself from the inside. You have become a stranger to yourself, and no one noticed, or pretended not to see. In 2021, a study conducted by Harvard Medical School revealed that more than 65% of adults who suffered emotional abuse in childhood or youth never sought help. In most cases, the reason was the same. I thought it was my fault. This idea that the problem is you, that you are the one who needs to change to fit in, to not be annoying, to not be too much, is the basis of every cycle of emotional oppression. And you lived it. But what few know is that this type of pain is like invisible ink. At first, no one sees it, but it's still there, marking, covering, suffocating, until one day it explodes, sometimes in the form of crises, others in illnesses, in exhaustion, in self-abandonment, and sometimes just in silence. A silence so profound that it swallows the scream before it even comes out. But the fact that you are here now shows that there is still something in you that has refused to be completely silent. They didn't know you were made of resistance. As they tried to push you down, thinking no one would hear your cry for help, something inside you clung to what was left, to its essence, to his memory, to that slightest reminder of who you were or who you can still be. There were many who tried to erase its history. And we're not just talking about individuals, we're talking about entire systems. Historically, people who refuse to fit in have always been isolated. In the 1950s, children with traits considered emotionally intense were classified as problematic in school settings. Instead of understanding, they received punishment. Decades later, many of these young people have become adults marked by diagnoses such as severe anxiety, resistant depression, or personality disorders. Not because they were fragile, but because they were forcibly molded into shapes that never fit them. You were taught to hide, and they called that maturity. You learned to swallow tears, and they called it balance. You were forced to accept little, and they called it humility. But now you begin to realize, all this was not wisdom. It was survival. You weren't the problem. You were in an environment that didn't know how to deal with your light. And that's the point. People who shine differently are uncomfortable. They destabilize. They force others to see what they don't want to see. And that's why you were hurt. Not because he is weak, but because he is a mirror. Mirrors don't show what people want to see. They show what it is. And many people prefer to live in illusion. The exclusion you felt, that feeling of being out of place even among your own, has an explanation. People who carry truths within themselves will always be treated as a threat by those who live on appearances. And you knew, even without knowing it. You felt it, intuited, and that's why they tried to keep quiet. But they couldn't. And now, little by little, you start to remember, start rebuilding the pieces they tried to break. You begin to recognize yourself, not as a victim, but as someone who survived the invisible. And that is the deepest connection anyone can have with their own story. The moment you realize you weren't weak. He was forced to be strong for too long. Now, the time has come to breathe, to put words to what hurt, to allow yourself to live without having to hide. Because recognizing your pain is not surrendering to it. It's the first step to reclaiming who you always were. It's time to regain your strength and build a new path. If this video is making sense to you, don't stop here. Click sign up now and discover the next step towards your transformation. The call that cannot be ignored. There are moments in life when pain stops being just a wound and becomes a sign. A secret code sent to the heart. Not everyone can hear, but those who do hear, they will never be the same again. Have you ever had the feeling that everything you went through, no matter how cruel it was, had a greater purpose hidden between the lines? As if every tear, every rejection, and every imposed silence were molding you into something that goes beyond what ordinary eyes can see? This is not a new idea. Since ancient times in different cultures, there have been those who carried seemingly unbearable burdens, not because of bad luck or punishment, but because they would, at some point, be the answer to the chaos around them. They weren't perfect. They were not saints. They were human, bruised, misunderstood, and yet chosen. But what does it mean, after all, to be a chosen one? It's not about status or privilege. It also has nothing to do with fame or recognition. Being chosen means carrying a greater sensitivity within you. It's noticing what others ignore. It's feeling before everyone else. It's listening to what's behind what is said. This kind of insight doesn't come without a price, because seeing too much in a world that pretends all the time is a sentence of constant conflict. The chosen ones are those who, from an early age, perceive the pain in others' eyes, even when there are smiles on their lips. They are those who detect falsehood in praise, cruelty in silence, abandonment in presence. And for this reason, they are confused with exaggerated, intense, unstable. But the truth is, they're just on a different frequency. Spiritually, this archetype has always existed. In Jewish tradition, for example, prophets were ordinary people who received a revelation. They didn't ask for it. In fact, the majority tried to resist. Jeremiah said he was too young. Moses claimed that he did not know how to speak well. Jonas tried to escape. Even so, everyone was summoned. Not because of your ability, but because of your willingness to listen to something greater. In Christianity, the concept of calling is even more explicit. In 2 Corinthians 12:9, Paul writes, "For power is made perfect in weakness." In other words, it is not in strength, but in vulnerability, that purpose manifests itself. The same goes for indigenous African and Eastern traditions. In many of them, the healers or spiritual guides are those who have experienced deep suffering. They are not elected by knowledge, but by scars. Are you understanding now? What they tried to use to break you was exactly what would make you ready. It is no coincidence that you survived what would destroy many. It's no coincidence that he's still here, even with everything he's faced. There is a reason. And it doesn't come from outside, or it comes from within. Those who have been silenced, discredited, discarded, are precisely those who carry the strength to transform realities. And that is why they were attacked so violently. Not to punish them, but to prevent them from waking up. But awakening does not depend on the permission of others. It just depends on silent recognition. I am more than what they did to me. The call does not scream. He whispers. You feel it in the early mornings when you can't sleep, but you feel like you need to keep going. Feel uncomfortable in the face of injustice. He feels an almost physical need to help, to protect, to rebuild. It's as if there's something inside you that doesn't accept evil winning, who refuses cynicism, even when the entire world has surrendered. That drive, that restlessness, is what makes you different. And here is the paradox. Being chosen is not about standing out. It's about serving. It's not about being seen. It's about seeing beyond. It's not about avoiding pain. It's about not allowing other people's pain to continue being ignored. You were not set apart to be better. It was set apart to be true. And that truth will cost. It will move away. It will leave you alone at many times, but it will also save. It will heal. It will open paths that others cannot follow. We're talking about mission, not position. Mission is what pursues you, even when you try to give up. It's what remains when everything fails. It is the silent conviction that your story needs to continue, not only for you, but for those who have not yet found their voice. The chosen are those who first walk through the fire so that others can find the way. And even though they are burned, they keep walking. So if you feel out of place, if you've always felt like you're carrying something you can't explain, if your story seems marked by loss that no one understands, maybe it's not a curse. Maybe this is the beginning of the revelation, because being chosen is not carrying a title. It's enduring pain that turns into purpose. It's hearing a call that only you understand. It's living with the certainty that, even if no one believes it, your existence plays a role in the balance of things. And that's what they fear. Because when a chosen one awakens, it changes everything around. Share this knowledge with the world. Together we can spread this message and help more people become free. Subscribe to the channel and send this video to anyone who needs to hear this truth. When pain becomes path, for a long time, all you wanted was to stop feeling anything, stop remembering, stop trying. There were days when getting out of bed seemed more of a challenge than a routine. The air was heavy, the silence screamed, and you barely recognized yourself in the mirror. But something inside you refused the end. Even without strength, even without direction, something insisted on continuing. It wasn't optimism, it was survival. A kind of silent faith that no one saw, but that you carried hidden in your chest. You may not have realized it, but this was the beginning of your turning point. While the world thought you were broken, you were rebuilding yourself. Not in a pretty way, not in a clean way, but real, authentic. Starting over doesn't look heroic. Sometimes it feels like weakness. Sometimes it's confusing, slow, contradictory. One step forward, 2 steps back. But still, it's movement, and that's what sets you apart. There are people who give up when the pain hits, and there are those who resist, even without knowing how. You are part of the second group. And here's the point. Overcoming is never about erasing what was experienced. It's about transforming what happened into a new foundation. It's giving meaning to chaos, not to justify, but to build. In 2022, the National Institute of Mental Health announced that approximately 50% of adults diagnosed with severe depression achieve significant improvement when they receive the right support and build a sense of personal purpose. In other words, it is not enough to treat the trauma. It is necessary to give it a new meaning. And you started doing this without even realizing it. Each time he decided to continue, even though he felt exhausted. Each time he chose silence so as not to repeat patterns. Every time you preferred respect for yourself to the approval of those who hurt you. All of this was healing, not instantaneous, but real. One step after another, even in the darkness. The world tries to make it seem like healing is forgetting, but you already know. It's about remembering without getting lost. You still feel it. Yes, there are still bad days, but now you know you're not in the same place anymore. Your story is no longer just wound, it is strength, and that changes everything. You became a reference, perhaps unintentionally, but inevitably. Because when someone survives what seemed like the end, they become a point of support for those who are still in the middle of the storm. You become a lighthouse, even without knowing that you are shining. And that's why your journey matters. Because there is someone somewhere who will hear his story and think, if he could do it, maybe I can too. This is inspirational power. This is when your pain stops being just yours and starts having a collective impact. It's when what knocked you down now gives you the basis to lift others up. And no, you don't need to be 100% healed to inspire. You just need to be walking, following, showing that it is possible. There are those who think that pain is an end. You have proven that it can be a starting point. Now you understand what they did to you doesn't define who you are, but what you did with it does. And you chose to continue. He chose to rebuild. He chose to live. This choice in itself is already a revolution. Remember when they said you were too sensitive? Now you realize that this sensitivity is what makes you human, that she is your strength, not your weakness. It is what connects you, what allows you to understand others, feel empathy. Welcome. World needs this. People need this. And you have this. You learn to walk with pain, without letting it paralyze you. You learned that you no longer need to fit in where people deny you. You learned that protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's self-care. And most importantly, he learned that being true is more important than being accepted. Your body carries memories, your mind, scars, but your spirit, it remains intact. Every time you take a deep breath and choose to keep going, you are defying all the voices that said you couldn't do it. And that is the victory that no one can take away. Do you still have difficult days? Yes, we all do. But now you know they pass, that they are not the end, that every difficult day is just another chapter, not the last one. You have history, you have purpose, and you have a voice. And while you're here, your presence will continue to be a reminder to those who thought about giving up. You are not just a survivor, it's a source, it's impulse, it's an example. And the most beautiful, you don't need to shout that. Just keep living with courage. To not miss any message from God, click the subscribe button, write "I'm ready" in the comments, and start aligning your energy with the transformation that is coming. The weight of reflecting what nobody wants to see. There are people who simply bother you even when they are silent. It's not because of their appearance, their tone of voice, or the opinions they express. Sometimes they don't even say anything. But his presence seems to ignite something in others, something that many prefer to keep turned off. You are one of those people, not because it provokes, but because it exists in a way that reveals it, and that for many is unbearable. Being a reflection of what others avoid seeing is a lonely burden. Have you ever noticed how in certain environments, it seems like the way you feel is too much? Like your intensity makes others uncomfortable? As if your existence is a reminder of something others have buried within themselves. This doesn't happen by chance. Often, the rejection you suffer is not related to your actions, but to what your presence represents. When you live authentically, you activate other people's fears. And we're not just talking about those who criticize you. Sometimes the discomfort even comes from those who love you. Family, friends, colleagues. Everyone can, at some point, project onto you weaknesses that they were unable to face within themselves. This phenomenon is known as psychic projection, a psychology term that explains how, faced with emotions that we cannot deal with, we start to see them in others. In other words, you are not the problem. You're just carrying the mirror. And mirrors don't create images, they just show what's there. But seeing what is hidden takes courage. And not everyone is ready for that. This is the paradox of those who carry light. Attracts, but also scares. You offer clarity, but it also reveals accumulated dirt. You offer presence, but it makes emotional absences emerge. You offer truth, but it destabilizes fragile constructions. And because of this, you often find yourself being pushed away, criticized, or misunderstood. Not because of a lack of value, but because of an excess of impact. This experience, although it may seem unique, is more common than you might think. In different contexts, similar stories repeat themselves. An overly sensitive child, always silent, always observant, who ends up being called weird by the family. A teenager who questions injustices, who refuses to pretend that everything is fine, and is therefore treated as a rebel. An adult who tries to maintain his integrity in a toxic work environment and therefore becomes the target of veiled exclusion. The language changes, faces change, but the essence is the same. What connects all these cases is an invisible thread, the unspoken truth. You carry this truth, and no matter how much you try to fit in, a part of you will always refuse the disguise. And that is where its strength lies. You didn't come to please, came to transform, not with violence, not with imposition, but with presence, with conscience, with a way of living that defies apathy. It makes you different, and sometimes lonely, but it also makes you essential. Have you ever noticed how other people feel more comfortable opening up to you? As if your listening had something sacred, as if your simple attention offers shelter? This is no coincidence. It's because your pain was not in vain. She taught empathy. She sculpted sensitivity. She gave you access to what many don't understand or prefer to ignore. You've been through things you should never have faced, but now, you understand what others go through, even without them saying a word. And that, in itself, is already a service. It's already healing. It's already a mission. But being a mirror has a price. Many will try to blame you for their own pain. Others will try to silence you to avoid the discomfort of seeing themselves reflected. Some will say you're the problem, when in fact you've just exposed what has always been there. But now you know this isn't about you. It's about what you activate. And the only thing you need to decide is, are you going to hide that mirror, or continue to be who you are? Because even if it costs acceptance, pleasing was never your purpose. You were not made to be a filter. It was meant to be true, and the truth, when it remains firm, transforms everything around it. Are you bothersome? Yes. But it also frees, and those who are ready to awaken will thank you for it. If you feel this calling within you, subscribe to the channel and write "I am chosen" in the comments. Declare that you are ready to receive what is already in store for you. You're still here, and that changes everything. You went through everything that seemed impossible. He was ignored when he needed support most. He fell silently, bled without visible wounds, and lay in pieces in places where no one saw him. Yet you are here. This in itself completely changes the logic of what they expected from you. They bet on his withdrawal. They expected you to break, disappear, or become what hurt you. But you chose to continue. He chose not to give back to the world the same pain he received. You could have become bitter. He could have kept quiet. He could have thrown everything away and hidden from the world forever. But something in you decided not to repeat the cycle. This choice, simple and silent, is what separates those who were shaped by pain from those who were dominated by it. The truth is that the difficult days have not disappeared. You still deal with memories. He still faces doubts. But now, you know where you're standing. Before, you walked around blindly, trying to understand why there was so much rejection, so much loneliness. Today, you understand. It wasn't about merit. It was about resistance. And you resisted. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone, nor justify yourself for being sensitive, nor can you explain yourself for seeing what others pretend not to see, nor do you lower yourself to fit into spaces that were never built for you. Anyone who didn't understand your value missed the chance to really know you. The time when you accepted little has passed. Now, every step you take comes with a new understanding. You no longer need to diminish yourself to fit into anyone's life. The pain that shaped you is no longer your prison. It is your foundation. She no longer commands her steps, but she will not be denied either, because it was she who formed you. She was the one who prepared you to see the world with different eyes. Your compassionate traits, your sensitive reading of situations, your way of listening, all of this was born from the experiences that broke you inside. And now you understand. What seemed like weakness was exactly what made you necessary. Today you are the person who survived the kind of pain that many cannot even name. And that's why your story matters. Because it doesn't end with trauma. It continues with reconstruction. People like you change realities without making a fuss. You breathe in when you walk, even when tired. You motivate when you don't hide your scars. You transform when you speak truthfully without needing to shout. Little by little, his story finds others, and they connect. Because there are thousands of people living the same dilemmas, facing similar pain, and hoping to see someone who has proven that it is possible to continue. You are that proof. The most important thing right now is to remember, you are no longer trying to survive. He's living, more clearly, with more control, with more awareness of who you are. And what was once a source of shame is now a sign of courage. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone will support it. And it's okay. Because the journey does not require applause, it demands firmness. You've walked alone before. And he survived. Now, you can choose who to continue with. You can say, no. You can say, that's enough now. You can start again as many times as necessary. Pain tried to mark its destiny. But it was you who wrote the rest of the story. And even though it all started with suffering, you gave another meaning to what you received. Yes, you are a chosen one. Not because someone nominated you, but because no one managed to destroy you completely. You are still here, stronger, more mature, more aware. And this scares those who couldn't get up from their own fall. You didn't win by shouting. There was no need for revenge. His victory was to remain standing, even after everything. And today, the simple fact of existing with dignity, of not giving up on yourself, is the answer to everything they tried to erase. The world tried to silence his voice. Now it resonates with those who still need to hear it. Your story inspires. Your presence has an impact. And what was a wound became a path for others. You won when you decided not to lose yourself. Now, follow. You don't need to carry pain as an identity. You can use it as a boost. And keep living, not despite what you've been through, but because of the strength you've built. Because being here, in one piece, after everything, is your greatest achievement. And no one can take that away from you. The awakening continues. If this video opened your eyes to truths you had never seen before, imagine what else you can discover. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications so you don't miss any content that will transform your life.